Good day to all of you out there. Welcome to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, on this sunny Friday morning, April 8th, 2022. Welcome to One News PH, and thank you for being subscribers of Signal TV, viewers of channels 8 and 250. Today, we are going to be featuring I don't know what to call him. I don't know if he should be called Aquaman, Mountain Man, the Rowing King, but our first guest today will be a gentleman. He is, if I'm not mistaken, Turkish-American, and he landed in Legazpi City about a month ago, if I'm not mistaken, and created quite a stir. But after everything was had settled down, we discovered that this gentleman is a record holder of sorts, Guinness record holder as well. Let's talk later to our first guest, Mr. Arden Erush, and he is he's not competing in races, but a record holder, solo rower. Imagine if you can, I can't even row myself across the pool, much less across the world or around the world. But he has done that. And if I'm not mistaken, he has also climbed several summits, mountains all over the world. And after that, after our talk with Arden, we will be speaking with Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere of the Department of Health because it may be a weekend, but I think all of you need to sober up. I know not you are not drunk, you have not been drinking, but I think many of you are too high on being free. Free at last, so the people go, but you know, going out is has now become a privilege, and please be careful because the World Health Organization has put out a warning that if we are not careful, we will have another surge in the next 2 months. It may happen this April, it could happen in May, and it may happen in June. So, enjoy your freedom now, the right to travel, the holidays, but please observe health protocols. Now, before we get into the thick of things, let's go and read our daily starter for the day. And I hope I can find it. There we go. Here we go. And it's appropriate for our first guest and topic. Do what you love, not what you think you're supposed to do. There are many people who do what they think they're supposed to do. And, that's good if you are a loving son, a loving daughter, a loving parent, filial piety, a parental love. That's all called responsibility. But there is another thing that you need to do, the thing that you need to do for yourself, what you love to do. Many people get into the wrong things because of a sense of obligation, duty, and then in their latter years, they end up saying, why did I waste my chance? Why did I give up that opportunity? Do what you love to do. Okay, now let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star. Today, April 8th, 2022, and the headline, like I said, World Health Organization warns of COVID surge in the next 2 months. Okay. Acting World Health Organization representative to the Philippines, Dr. Rajendra Yadav, has reminded balikbayans and people from urban areas who will visit provinces during the holidays to wear a mask and get COVID booster because the probability of a surge, of a COVID surge, is very high because that has been the pattern for many other countries. If you remember the catastrophe, the disaster that happened in India, it happened during the religious holidays and elections. They all went out. They went out in flocks, droves, and crowds. And before you know it, people were literally dying on the street. Sana po wag mangyari yan sa atin. At the top of the paper, doctors want vaccination cards to have expiry dates. We have been talking about that, reading the news for you in the past few days, and this is the direction we will find out from Undersecretary Vergere if there is now an ideal timeline being discussed. Meanwhile, 313 million Filipinos remain unemployed despite reopening of the economy. And that photo there is of a father and son going through the ring of sprinklers at the Wetland Adventure Lagoon, the country's first aqua playground park at Taguig City. Below that, 51% in a recent survey believe that the economy will be improving this year. Meanwhile, the president opened the OFW Center to improve services for migrant workers and 8 party list groups to get 2% of votes, according to Pulse Asia. On the left bottom of the page, you have a photo of Croma CEO Ian Monsod leading the launch of the new digital entertainment company last week. And on the right bottom side of the paper, a photo of former House Speaker Feliciano Sani Belmonte, who received the Peace Award for Public Service from the Sino-Phil-Asia International Peace Awards Foundation, presented by Romanian Ambassador Raduta Dana Matush and Dr. Regis Romero, the second special envoy of the president to Japan. And those are the front page news. Let's now go to our first guest today. He is the holder of 18 Guinness World Records, first person to complete solo circumnavigation of the world by human power. In Tagalog, siya po ay nagsagwan sa paikot ng mundo. We have with us a gentleman who is the leading ocean rower in the world today, recipient of the 2013 Citation of Merit from the Explorers Club. And he's got so many. I'm not going to read them. I'm just going to introduce him. Mr. Arden Erush. Arden, good day to you, senor.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you for joining us. I understand that you have, I don't know if you make a living out of it, but you have devoted much of your life rowing oceans and climbing mountains. How did you start out on this adventure?
I don't necessarily make a living out of it, but it has become my life for sure. I started my adventure lifestyle after I lost a friend while rock climbing together. His name was Göran Kropp. He had bicycled from Sweden to Nepal in 1996 to climb Everest. He towed his climbing gear behind his bicycle. He had encouraged me to get started with my circumnavigation. I was a climber, I was an athlete, I ran marathons, and I was physically active. And it wasn't a difficult transition physically, but mentally I had not committed yet, and his death pushed me forward.
Okay, well, I did say that the other day, that sometimes the greatest pains is what pushes us towards our great purpose in life. And apparently that painful episode pushed you forward. But how does one go about it? I hope you don't mind, but my wife, who's from the Netherlands, pointed out to me, Cito, that guy is 60 years old. You can still do it. I said, I think it was a mistake to get him as my guest.
Yeah, well, there is no stopping if one keeps moving, right? So as one commits to a lifestyle where one remains active and physical, then the body adjusts and adapts. I may slow down, but I don't need to stop. So the accident happened in September 2002. I had started thinking about such a journey in 1997, tracing my finger across a map that was hanging on the wall of our software development lab. And my friend had encouraged me. And when I lost him, I said, life is short. I have to get going. So the accident happened in September. November was his funeral. On the way back on the plane, I drew the world map on a piece of paper, and I decided that I was going to climb the highest summit on each of the continents along my circumnavigation routes. First to climb was Mount McKinley in Alaska. I bicycled up there in winter conditions, studded tires, towing my climbing gear, just like Yoran had to Everest, climbed it, came back. And then in 2007, I launched on the Pacific Ocean and tried to reach Australia. I ended up north of Papua New Guinea, and Frabel Fishing Corporation out of Philippines became a great help when typhoon season started and threatened my safety. They took me to General Santos City and then dropped me off where they picked me up after the typhoon season so I could continue my journey. So they became a part of my story. I climbed Kosciuszko in Australia, then Kilimanjaro in Africa after crossing the Indian Ocean. And I finished my circumnavigation journey back at where I started in California in 2012, 5 years, 11 days later. So along the way, I had, due to lack of sponsorship, you asked whether I made a living out of this. No, I don't. I was spending our own money with my wife, Nancy. Our retirement funds went to this. And I decided that I wasn't going to attempt Everest and Elbrus along the way because it was going to be too expensive, too long. So I rushed to the finish line in the circumnavigation. So I had Everest, Elbrus, and Aconcagua left to go climb. So my goal is to reach Everest on this journey. I relaunched from Crescent City in California in June of 2021. 80 days later, I reached Hawaii in September. And then in October, a month later, after trying to get visas to China and such, I relaunched from Hawaii and reached Guam in 128 days later. And then after that, it was by chance that I ended up at Legazpi, actually. My intention was to go south to Celebes Sea, south of Mindanao, toward Makassar Strait, and reach Balikpapan in Borneo. The currents and winds did not allow me to go that way, and Legazpi lined up. After long hours of rowing, days of struggle, I made it into Legazpi, and that became my happy ending to this journey. That happened on 24th of March. And since then in Legazpi, we secured the rowboats. I have received wonderful reception. The Legazpi Oceanfront Hostel hosted me in the time that I spent there. Alba Yacht Club Boatyard is where my rowboat is right now, secured. And I am going home to Gig Harbor in the state of Washington to reunite with my wife, who's been wonderful and with her patience over all these years.
Okay, well, now I think it's my wife who's going to regret that I got to interview you, because your wife is the shining example of sainthood and patience and cooperation.
Oh, yeah.
But let me ask you. I've got so many questions to ask, but you're climbing mountains and rowing through oceans, but those are two different disciplines. Or are we mistaken about this? Because some people will tell me, Sito, you need to develop your oxygen capacity and efficiency climbing, but in rowing, it's not that difficult. It's more of the willpower and the physique.
There is adjustment time, certainly. in all of these endeavors. It is easier on land to stop and rest and give myself a day to recover, continue again until my body adjusts to the challenge. In rowing, I can choose my departure date and location, and also choose an opportunity, a window of launch where the winds and currents will be in my favor, so that I can get away from shore for the first week, 2 weeks. Then I wouldn't be so stressed to break free of land effects. And then after that, the body starts adjusting. I don't expect performance until 4 to 6 weeks after launch. And then after that, all is fair. In approaching Legazpi, for example, to remain out of Leyte Gulf and San Bernardino Strait to negotiate the currents and the fickle winds with squalls, I had to be on the oars on 6 hours of sleep a day. I would row into the night, sleep 4 hours, get up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then basically wear myself out on the oars, go back to sleep at around 5 a.m., 2 hours, get up, have my breakfast, get back on the oars. This continued for about 10 days. I was already tired. And then the last 72 hours to stay out of San Bernardino Strait, I had to control the boat, and I had a 40-hour nonstop row to enter Albay Gulf. I had 4 hours of sleep in the Albay Gulf entrance, and then another 12-hour push to 8 miles short of Legazpi. I dropped anchor finally at 50-meter depth. Once I found the depth, I said, that's it, I'm resting. And then the next morning I got up. I couldn't pull the anchor back up. It was too deep to pull it. I had to cut my anchor road line and then pull into Legazpi. So that's the kind of physical challenge and the mental demand that it requires sometimes to be able to keep this boat on course, because I am the engine.
Okay, when this started, it was essentially to fulfill a vision or an idea of what your friend had shared with you and believed you should do. But I get the impression listening to you that it's not as easy as buying a kayak or a canoe and getting a paddle and putting food. I mean, studying the currents, the winds, etc. What sort of preparation or study did you have to get into to understand the science of rowing and all that?
Yeah, so what I do is not for the lighthearted, that is for sure. Ocean rowing is a demanding endeavor. Depending on the routes, there are racing routes on the Atlantic Ocean leaving from Canary Islands, which is easier to depart because of the favorable currents and winds, and then ends up in Antigua nowadays. They used to go to Barbados. So those follow favorable winds and currents, and that's a very reliable course to choose. So it's a good course to gain experience. But when one gets on the Pacific Ocean, it is so big, so it covers so many longitudes. And by the time I got to Philippines, I had gone across 112 degrees of longitude to get to Philippines. That pushes one across seasons. It pushes one across multiple current regimes and wind regimes. And winter swells from the northwest really slowed me down. Winter wind patterns were manageable, but the swells were really slowing me down. For example, I hadn't planned on that. And my goal was to go to Hong Kong. Now, Ocean Recovery Alliance, we're in partnership with them to raise awareness about plastic pollution in our oceans. And I was connecting to classrooms and such. And we decided, okay, I will go to Hong Kong, which is where they're operating from. But without a visa to China and with the delays involved, I did not trust that I could pass through Luzon Strait and make it to Hong Kong. I was going to end up north on the Chinese shores, probably, or even North Korea, it was going to become a gamble. So I said, no, maybe I should go southwest where the winds want to take me.
Mhm.
So I ended up at Guam. And then from Guam, I aimed for Borneo, as I was saying, when the winds and
Yeah.
currents didn't allow.
Yeah,
I
but-
came to Legazpi. All of these are
Yeah.
the challenges. So one has to be flexible, even though you plan everything properly. It is not always what we plan.
Yeah, but
the outcome.
Ardan, don't tell me that you Googled all of this.
Well, there are climatological data available
Mhm.
that gives us wind and current and swell data from the past 10, 15 years. So one
Okay.
has to study all of these and design a route. I plan my crossing based on 30 miles a day, 1,000 miles a month or so.
Mhm.
And then my battle is to stay on that course. The ocean carries me across,
Yeah.
and I then fight to stay on that course. If winds push me off course, I have to row to stay on course, or maybe sometimes use what we call a para anchor, a parachute in the water to keep me from being carried away by the winds. So it slows my drift,
Mhm.
and it helps me stay with the seas and currents. Then if the boat is doing what I want, then that's my chance to take a break and rest and recover, do laundry, wash myself, all
Okay.
those things.
Do
Feed
laundry in the middle of the ocean. Who cares if you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
do your laundry? Or does it really make a difference?
Well, salt spray is never a good thing on one's skin, and it
Mm.
creates salt boils, and it really itches. And once the skin breaks, then it itches even more. It's an unending battle. One has to protect against the elements. So sun is a concern. Salt
Mhm.
boils are a concern, especially under me, where I
Go
sit.
ahead. Go ahead. We're a very liberal
Yes.
program.
So my bottom, where the hair follicles get irritated, they can get infected and turn into a boil, and then that becomes very uncomfortable and painful. So one has to be very intentional about keeping the bottom clean.
Mhm.
And constantly rinsing, using fresh water in cleaning. And if I have irritation, then I use baby diaper rash cream,
Mhm.
which has
Okay.
antibiotics and treatment in it. So that works like a charm. And so I really take care of my bottom. That's a big problem.
Okay,
The
now,
hands,
yeah.
are okay. They don't get blistered because I use an open hand grip rather than full grip.
Mhm.
So the hands are just a hook, so it doesn't blister as much, and it toughens after a while. That's manageable. But the bottom, oh my, you have to be very careful with that one.
But when you set out on your journeys, I wouldn't call them trips because they feel like they take forever, I'm sure. But when you
Yeah.
set out, you don't have dates or it's not a competitive thing, is it? I mean, you're competing against
No.
yourself, but you're not setting, oh, I got to be here by this date.
Well, there is some concern about the window, seasons, and when to be where. Those are decided by the route that I choose. So, for example, when I left in June, it was hurricane season already, and I had to wait out hurricanes to pass south of me. The lows that originate from south of Mexico coming west-northwest, passing between me and Hawaii. So once I had a window, I rushed down toward Hawaii to get into Waikiki. And then I spent a month in Waikiki waiting so that the season would advance, so I wouldn't be caught in a storm in October and November. I let the season advance to avoid lows west of Hawaii, but then I got caught in a storm in December. It wasn't
And-
totally foolproof. I had damage that happened to the boat. It's knocked the boat over almost upside down. and then recovered, but it caused some damage that needs repairs before I get back on the South China Sea in January or February from hopefully San Fernando. So I will come back with repair materials and do that and then go. The roof is leaking right now in my cabin, for example. There's damage. I lost 2 spare oars. Anyway, I continued on and reached Guam, but then the winds and currents in the Celebes Sea were fickle. In March, we were seeing April-like conditions in the Celebes Sea, so I lost my confidence that I should go that way. And also, piracy was a concern south of Mindanao, near Mindanao. We decided, okay, we're going to go west. So,
have you ever been the big victim of such piracy, or what scary stories or memorable tales do you have? You sailors all have your stories, your pockets full of stories.
Yeah, I have been lucky that I did not encounter a direct piracy threat. However, on approaching Africa, for example, after I left Australia in 2011, 2010, I approached Africa from the east, and my goal was to go to Kenya, and I was in touch with the flagship of the International Task Force Navy that was operating in those waters, and they take turns every 4 months changing flags country to country. It's an international outfit. So with my luck, it was a Turkish naval frigate that was in charge. That was the flagship, and the rear admiral on board communicated with me directly, giving me information. So we rerouted toward south of Kenya. They said, don't go there. There's piracy activity. So I rerouted toward Mozambique. I couldn't go there due to the currents and such. And I ended up at Madagascar. And then eventually after the cyclone season, I crossed the Mozambique Strait. But they were in touch. They came and they visited. And I was keeping my lights off at night, turning my AIS, automatic information system. It tells everybody where I am, and I see them as well. So I was on listening mode, but not giving out any light or signal or sounds. VHF was on off. So I basically was applying a strict curfew so that I wouldn't be discovered as easily. So those are the kinds of precautions one has to take at times.
Okay. Arden, I'm sorry. I'm sure you've been asked this question time and again, but I have to ask what the audience ask. Why? Why do you do it, and what do you get out of it?
The why, what started me, as I was saying, was a dedication to a friend. And as I became more experienced and started establishing records and found joy in the process, it became a way to demonstrate mastery. So when I am on the ocean and making these crossings, I am actually living an experience that is rare, and it is also very gratifying because it fills my soul to be out there in solitude and to be one with nature and to be able to talk to the audience to raise awareness about plastics pollution and the plight of all species on Earth. I defend that we as humanity have to be stewards of Mother Earth because we are here for a purpose. We are acting like pests, killing their host rather than stewards. We need to really change our behavior and start taking care of our fellow creatures on this earth. Our grandchildren will not experience the majesty of nature if we stay on this same track. We are destroying this earth. So talking about these things and serving such a purpose has been a mission for me. We set up a nonprofit organization around and over in Seattle. Right before I started my journeys in 2003, the goal was to reach children, especially students in classrooms, and to prepare the next generation to take on that role, because clearly our generation has not done a good job of being stewards of this earth, and they are inheriting the mess that we leave them. So if I can influence their behavior, I will be happy.
Well, I commend you for that, and I love that you use the word mastery, and that alone speaks a ton. And I do hope that you continue to enjoy your journey, find meaning in it, purpose, and thank you for inspiring us. And I do hope to hear and read more about you. Arden, have a good day.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a world record holder, solo rower, machine, rowing machine in the ocean, Mr. Arden Erush. And we will now go for a break. And when we return, time to get serious about COVID-19 with Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere of the Department of Health. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program agenda. I'm your host, Sita Beltran. We thank PLDT Home Fiber Optic Internet for their very reliable services. And now let's bring in our a regular guest here on the program who has always been a source of very good, accurate information. Let's bring in Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere of the Department of Health. Undersecretary, good morning.
Good morning, sir, at magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Okay, Yusek, to start everything, the WHO country representative said that we have to be careful, or there could be a surge, or there will be a surge in 2 months. What is the assessment of the Department of Health? Ito ba ay if or when?
It's really when. And if it's going to happen, we really do not know when. And we really also are not certain if it's also really going to happen. So the questions are both because right now the vaccination rate in the Philippines is high. And with that, we are relying and we are confident that we are minimizing the transmission because of this. Second, notwithstanding, no, we have high vaccination rates, but we are seeing that a lot of people are going out, mobility is very high, compliance to minimum public health standards. Wag na po natin pag-usapan yung mask. Nakikita naman natin, nakamask naman yung mas madami, no?
Mm.
Pero yung crowding, yung pagpunta po dun sa mga enclosed spaces, political rallies, political sorties, and now we are going to have the May 9 election. So ito po yung mga tinitignan natin at binabantayan maigi. So ito yung pwede, no? The risk factor is very high, the probability is very high that we can have increase in the number of cases in the coming weeks to come.
Okay, now if we do have an increase, because you clarified recently na nagkaroon na tayo ng 690 cases ba yon? Pero that was 2 weeks ago pa. Now, ano po ba, what is the current case loads for new COVID cases? And is this a point of concern, or because some people are saying, Omicron para lang trangkaso yan, etc. What can you tell our viewers, please?
Yes, sir. No, so in this recent 7 days, no, so we analyze it in a 7-day moving average. In the country, we are now averaging 357 new cases per day. So that's a 1-week average. So pag tinignan ho natin, hindi po tumataas dyan, no? Sa numero na yan ang bawat araw natin for this past 7 days and even in the previous weeks. For the National Capital Region, nakakita po tayo ng medyo pagtaas. Ano? From the previous week, we had 126 cases per day. Ngayon po, we have 136 cases per day. This is 1 week again. We are trying to monitor closely. But right now, across the different regions, lahat po yan minimal risk. Lahat less than 1 ang average daily attack rate. Ang atin pong 2-week growth rate ay hindi naman din po tumataas. And what would be most important for us to monitor right now would be our hospitals. Nakikita po natin ang utilization sa ospital ay mababa. Ang atin pong severe case, no, pag tinignan natin, less than 5 na lang, no? Itong linggong ito, isa lang ang naitala na severe case. And that's really a progress for us, wherein we were really registering a lot of severe and critical cases in the past. So maganda po ang pinapakita. Ngunit ngayon, may nakikita ho tayong mga pagtaas ng kaso sa iba't ibang areas ng bansa. Pero these are not significant increases yet. So binabantayan natin maigi, katulad sa NCR nga po, katulad ng sabi ko, tumaas ng 10. May nakikita ho tayong ibang areas dito sa NCR na medyo tumataas ang kaso, but not significant yet, and their hospital utilization is not affected naman po.
Okay, but what about the type of COVID variant? Yung bang, kasi nga, marami sinasabi, okay na yan kasi bakunado. As you pointed out, we're highly vaccinated as a population. Now, yung bang vaccine natin, does it effectively covers everyone, whether it's Delta or Omicron?
Well, that is what we had been reiterating to the public since the start, no? Nung dumating po ang Omicron variant, naapektuhan niya po ang ating mga bakuna. And this is based on evidence, no? Na pinakita nitong Omicron, it has affected the immunity that it gives to specific individuals, kung saan binaba niya po ng hanggang sa mga 50% lang ang protection na binibigay niya for severe infections and hospitalizations and deaths. Kaya po, dumabas po yung ating guidelines on boosters that people should have themselves boosted kasi may evidence din na lumabas na kapag binigyan ka ng booster, tinataas uli ng booster yung protection mo up until 88%. So we are now encouraging people to receive their boosters because what is circulating right now in the country and even outside of the country across the globe is the Omicron variant. And this Omicron variant affects our immunity. That's why we need to have boosters.
Okay, now you were talking about boosters and waning efficacy. Ako po, nagpa-booster ako December 28. Now, for anyone who's had the booster, what are the chances that we will have to have a 4th shot? Kasi that's what they're already talking about in the United States, doing 4th shot, and some other countries in Europe are already studying this. is the booster shot enough na for 1 year, or do you see the probability of a fourth booster shot coming up?
Actually, sir, maraming mga debate tungkol dito sa fourth dose ngayon, across the globe, across experts. Nakakapagpakita naman ng ebidensya in other countries na itong fourth shot gives benefit para dun sa mga immunocompromised at saka senior citizens.
Mhm.
But hindi pa rin po kompletong evidence para masabi natin that it's going to give adequate benefit para sa general population. So ngayon, ang ginawa po ng DOH with this evidences at hand at saka yung rekomendasyon ng experts natin, nag-apply na ho tayo ng amendment ng Emergency Use Authority from the Food and Drug Administration para makapagbigay tayo ng fourth dose sa senior citizens at saka immunocompromised individuals. But for the general population, pinag-aaralan pa ho ng maigi yan.
Okay, assuming that the FDA gives approval for this fourth booster for immunocompromised and senior citizens, how soon will you be able to do it? And does this require a special kind of vaccine? Kasi noong po ginawa yung third booster na yan o yung vaccine para sa mga bata, they were talking about a different type of vaccine. Itong fourth booster ba, same pa rin?
Well, I don't like to preempt FDA, because when we apply, they study kung ano ang dapat, ano yung experiences with stringent regulatory authorities. Pero dun po sa mga ebidensya across the globe, it's the same formulation. Wala po tayong bagong formulation for that. Yun pa rin po ang ibibigay. How soon it will be? As soon as EUA is there, we are going to implement it as soon also.
Okay, perhaps Undersecretary, we could use this time para ma-explain ninyo kasi we agree that there are still a lot of Filipinos who have not had their booster shots, and people feel na hindi na kailangan yan. Bakit? Why is the government making a big deal out of it? Ano ba ang mangyayari pag nagpatuloy na marami ay walang booster shot? You've already said because the first two shots, humihina ang effect niyan, humihina yung coverage mo. But is there another scenario that the government is concerned with?
Well, that is the real scenario that we are looking at. Because by giving these COVID-19 vaccines, we guarantee the protection of our population. Now, this guarantee cannot be sustained if we do not receive our boosters. Ang sinasabi ho natin, hindi lang po Omicron ang variant nitong COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 virus. There might be some more variants to come. Like right now, umiikot po ang XE, umiikot ang XT, umiikot ang XF. These are sublineages of the Omicron. At alam natin, yung Omicron, yung mother niya na virus, yung lineage niya, ay talagang nakakaapekto ng ating mga bakuna. So it decreases or reduces the protection inside our body. So ano ba ang implikasyon nito? So ito pong primary series po natin ng bakuna, yung first and second doses nyo, opo, nakakaprotekta yan sa atin. Even with symptomatic infections, meron din protection. Pero nagwo-wane ng immunity. Alam po natin from the very start, because these are new vaccines, na hindi po natin certain. There is no certainty as to how long immunity will last. Even your natural immunity. Marami po nagsasabi, sir, kasakit na ako tapos nabakunahan pa ako, so I have super immunity. That is not true. Hindi po nagkakapare-pareho ang immunity na length of immunity ng isang tao. Yung iba after being sick kasi mababa lang yung naging response ng immune system niya, after maybe 1 to 2 weeks tapos na ang natural immunity. So do not rely on that. So we are offering the booster shot so that we can add more protection to the population.
Okay, now what about this issue about vaccines? Kasi marami sa amin medyo na-surprise. I mean, it was a good idea, helpful to other countries, but yung magbibigay daw tayo, magdo-donate na raw tayo ng mga vaccines sa Myanmar and some other countries. Kaya lang, ang ipapadala daw natin yung pa-expire na. So medyo pasensya na kayo. May mga nagkomentaryo. Ano ba naman yan? Magmamagandang loob na tayo. Tira pa yung ipapadala natin. That's one issue. And then the second is, which is the more serious issue being raised by certain politicians, that it may seem that the DOH is not monitoring its stocks, its ordering process, and we just keep ordering, and now we have an oversupply.
Yes, sir. No? So, unang-una, hindi naman po sa ganon that we are not monitoring. We do monitoring. We do wall-to-wall inventories actually, sir, hanggang sa baba. Ang nangyari lang po talaga kasi, nung una na uncertain pa yung ating environment, no, yung ating supply environment, talagang kailangan natin mag-negotiate so that we can have appropriate and adequate stocks for the country. Ang nangyari, nag-place tayo ng order. For some of these vaccines, we placed order earlier, no? Like for example, first quarter of the year. Dumating po yung isang bulk ng vaccines December na ng 2021. So that's one. The second would be, we ordered the national government, but local governments and the private sector also wanted to order. So they ordered, no? So dumami rin po yung ating stocks for that. Nung dumadating na yung stocks natin, nauna yung stocks natin kaysa sa local government and private, they got, no, the vaccines of the national. So yung kanilang mga na-order din were left, no, na hindi pa nagagamit. So yun po, another thing yun. And then the third, of course, meron tayong mga wastage din naman, and that is acceptable. Ang wastage po natin ngayon sa bakuna, 2% lang. Ang 10% po ang ideal na, I mean, the standard, no, for WHO to say that we flagged na alarming yan, di ba? So ito po yung mga sitwasyon natin sa ngayon. Ngayon, yung ibibigay ho natin sa ibang bansa, hindi naman ho yan near expiring actually. Actually, for all of these vaccines that we're set to expire, we were able to get, no, itong extension of shelf life from the Food and Drug Administration. Pinag-aralan uli ng mga manufacturers if the shelf life can be extended, and some of these vaccines that were set to expire, nakapag-extend tayo ng shelf life. So hindi po expiring ang ibibigay natin. Of course, the countries to receive this would also not allow for their population to receive expired vaccines. So ang ibibigay ho natin, nakapag-extend tayo ng shelf life, and it is still potent. Ibig sabihin, magagamit pa, and it's going to be effective for their population still.
Okay, so as far as ordering is concerned, mamimili pa ba? Will the DOH continue to procure vaccines, or will there be a moratorium?
Hindi naman po sa moratorium, no. Meron ho tayong budget for vaccines eh. So atin pong minamapa or ini-inventory nga kung ano pa ang kailangan, katulad nung sa Pfizer sa mga bata. It was a reformulated vaccine, so therefore, kailangan natin bumili kasi hindi sa kanila pwede yung existing stocks natin at saka yung mga nare-receive natin for donations. But for the others, wala pa ho tayo ngayon na pinoprocure. We are still trying to analyze, no, our current stocks and what would be needed in the coming months or by next year para maiayos po natin ang procurement natin.
You mentioned children. What is the plan for school children? Because may mga nag-aalala na while the medical community is already pushing for a new type of vaccination card na dapat kasama yung booster, pushing for boosters to be mandatory. What are we going to do about children who will now be forced to go back to face-to-face classes? Kasi ano ba ang coverage na natin for our children? At how many % of that population has been vaccinated?
For 5 to 11 years old, sir, we have 1.1 million fully vaccinated 5 to 11 years old children. This is about 8% for targeted eligible na 5 to 11 years old. Medyo mababa at mabagal. Alam po natin yon, pinag-iisipan maigi ng ating mga magulang itong pagbabakuna kasi. Yun pong sa adolescents natin at 12 to 17, ito po yung mataas ang ating coverage. We already were able to fully vaccinate 9 million of these 12 to 17. So it's about 76%. Meron na ho tayo, no, para dito sa 12 to 17 years old. As to the children, no, when they go to school, it is not mandatory for them to get vaccinated. Iyan po ay isa sa atin pong pinapaklaro, no, sa ating mga magulang. Ang kailangan pong bakunado would be the teaching personnel and the non-teaching personnel. And we have to ensure that the school is a safe place for our children. So nakikipag-usap po ang DepEd sa amin para yung atin pong mga pamantayan, yung mga protocols na ipatutupad ay makakasigurado tayo na ang mga bata ay magiging ligtas sa kanilang mga eskwelahan.
Okay, God forbid, pero paano kung may mangyaring incident or there is an outbreak in a school or in several schools? Will this force the DOH to take the position that children must first be vaccinated or not?
We will retain yun pong pagiging voluntariness nitong pagbabakuna na to. That's one, no?
Mhm.
Ang pangalawa, in any outbreak naman po, we investigate, we try to see the source, and we try to address it through our protocols. What
Mhm.
would be most important would be that mothers will know, no, that extra protection ito sa mga bata kapag pumasok sila itong pagbabakuna. We are not going to force it upon them, pero kailangan isipin din po nila yung benepisyo na binibigay nito para sa kanilang mga anak, para sigurado din po sila. Outbreaks will still happen. Kahit pumababa na yung mga kaso natin, dadating at dadating tayo na magkaka-outbreak. But the government is prepared para po i-address ito together with the DepEd. Meron na ho tayong mga networks o facilities at saka nandyan na rin yung protocols na ipapatupad para ligtas pa rin ang ating kabataan kung sakaling magkaroon ng ganitong incident.
Para dun sa mga medyo kumbaga nagtatanong or hindi pa alam, and what is the situation? Ano ang nangyari na dun sa mga adolescents and yung 5 to 11? What is the outcome been for side effects or benefits nitong vaccination? And are they going to be given boosters as well?
Unang-una yung adverse events po for 5 to 11 years old and 12 to 17, very minimal, very, very rare, no? It's just less than 1% po yung mga serious na tinatawag natin. At lahat po ito dumadaan doon sa tinatawag nating causality assessment. We have a group of experts assessing this in every region of the country and even here in the national. Marami po dyan sa mga naisumite sa amin were coincidental. Ibig sabihin yung mga iba na nagpagsumite, meron sila talagang angking sakit, no? Meron silang ibang sakit. That's why they had this serious adverse event. But anyway, ito pong 5 to 11 at saka 12 to 17, ito pong mga booster doses na sinasabi, wala pa ho iyang kompletong ebidensya para sa age group na ito. Even for the general population, yung 4th dose, wala pa rin hong kompletong ebidensya. So we just need to wait for completed evidence so that we can be able to provide also boosters for the specific sector of the population.
Okay, so if you would, no, if you would allow me, can we just get out of the COVID na? Kasi pati ako, napapatig na ako dyan sa COVID na yan. Ano naman ang mga ibang concerns ngayon ng DOH? Kasi when you mentioned yung mga adolescents, naalala ko tuloy yung anak ko na nagpa-dengue vaccine and it protected her, yung buong batch nila, walang na dengue, etc. What is the situation of dengue and other concerns in the Philippines?
Sa ngayon, sir, no? So we are expecting, no? Unang-una, we are expecting na baka tumaas ang measles cases dito sa ating bansa. Having gone through all of the data that we had been receiving, no, from the different areas of the country, ang baba po ng naging bakunahan natin for our children, the routine immunization for this past 2021, 2020, no? So ngayon po nasa kalahati lang tayo nung na-reach natin na targeted population. That's why the DOH will now have this supplemental immunization activity.
That is, sorry Yusek, no? That is because of the lockdowns. Hindi naman because merong ayaw nilang magpabakuna.
Tama po yan, sir. No? The pandemic has really affected our routine immunization. So yung access po para sa serbisyo ay medyo talagang bumaba. Kaya po bumaba ang ating mga bakunahan. Pero ngayon, meron ho tayong programa, yung supplemental immunization activity kung saan for April, May, and June, every last Thursday and Friday of each of these months, we will have supplemental immunization activity. Ibig sabihin, ito lang ang gagawin ng ating healthcare workers. Magbabakuna po tayo ng ating mga kabataan para maitaas natin ang antas at wala pong maging outbreak ng tigdas, Maari ang polio, maari po yung iba pang sakit na pino-cover nitong routine immunization. As to dengue cases, we are not seeing a lot of dengue cases right now, sir. Alam niyo po, may mga pag-aaral sa buong bansa with regard to these specific diseases. Bumaba, it was reduced because of what we are doing for minimum public health standards and because of the lockdowns. You know, dengue will happen in workplaces, in schools, and nakasara yung mga trabaho, nakasara po ang mga eskwelahan, and therefore, bumaba ang kaso kasi less breeding sites, less interaction with people. That's why yung mga ganito pong sakit ay bumaba sa ngayon dito sa ating bansa.
Okay, so walang masyadong cases. Yung sinabi ninyo, Yusek, regarding the polio, diphtheria, etc., yung measles, hindi ba pwedeng ipagsabay na yan dun sa what the President ordered the other night, that health workers go house to house? Kumbaga, pakyawan na, di ba? Lahat, sige, mga bata, labas nyo na rin para mabakunahan na.
Yes, sir. No? So dito po sa sinabi nating April, May, and June na programa ng DOH for supplemental immunization, magbabahay-bahay din po ang ating workers. But we are trying to avoid mixing kasi na yung iba magbabakuna ng COVID-19, yung iba magbabakuna ng routine immunization. Nagkakaroon po kasi ng errors ang ating healthcare workers. Prone po tayo dun sa nagkakaroon, mabibigyan ng ibang bakuna, hindi pala iyon. So para maiwasan po yan, talagang nagde-dedicate po tayo ng specific na days for routine immunization, specific din for COVID-19.
Okay, so last but not the least, what about, kasi lumabas the other day, or last week actually, that COVID-19 is only the third killer of Filipinos. Ano ba ang top 2 killers ng Filipinos before COVID-19?
Well, sa ngayon, pag tinitignan natin, sir, no, there would be these non-communicable diseases, yung cardiovascular, yung diabetes, yung mga lifestyle-related diseases that's topping our list also. And another one would be tuberculosis, no, respiratory disease, no, like tuberculosis, pneumonia. Yan po yung mga nakakatap sa atin. Ano? Pangatlo lang ang COVID. Pag tinignan natin ang COVID-19 from 2020 to 2021, hindi naman po ganun kataasan ang mga namamatay sa atin. Ano? Although may mga namamatay, but it is not really that high compared to other countries. We had been plagued, no, by this TB, yun pong ating mga namamatay ng stroke, namamatay ng sakit sa puso, diabetes, may sakit sa bato. Ito po ang mga nagtatap sa mga listahan natin ngayon.
Medyo lockdown related yata kasi I went to a birthday party the other day. Lahat ng mga hindi ko nakitang lalaki 2 years ago, in the last 2 years, they all gained 20 pounds. Sabi ko, ano nangyari sa inyo? Mga bullshit kayo. So, could be lockdown related, correct?
It is not, we can assume that way, no, sir, because there's lack of mobility. At tapos, syempre, nasa bahay tayo, kain tayo ng kain lahat. So, naandyan po yung talagang risk factors natin. So, we advise our population, hindi lang po COVID ang sakit na dapat natin bantayan. Bantayan po natin at pangalagaan ang ating katawan dahil marami pa rin pong ibang sakit na maaari makaapekto sa atin.
Okay, well, thank you very much. As always, Undersecretary Vergere, you have given us so much information, and I do hope na medyo bombahin pa natin ng public information ang mga Pilipinos, because I really, really don't want to see another lockdown, much less another surge of COVID-19. Thank you very much for joining us today, Undersecretary.
Maraming salamat po, sir.
Okay, yan po si Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere of the Department of Health. And please, just a reminder once again, if you don't want another lockdown, if you don't want for people to be sick, die, if you don't want that you don't get to visit your apo, your mother, your parents, your friends, please observe health protocols. Please put on your mask. Please social distance pa rin tayo as much as possible. At yung mga campaign, medyo mag-ingat naman po tayo. Okay, I leave you with our blessing for this week from the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 13. And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. and you shall only go up and not down. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, being careful to do them. And that's today's agenda. We hope to see you again next week, Monday, and please consider the fact that the Holy Week is about to start. Let us be more reflective about our spiritual life, our relationships, particularly with the Lord. Thank you very much and have a good day. Please keep it here on One News PH.